Another place to start, the brand's colors. Here's an example. This is the logo of Wolters Kluwer. Most organizations have a brand color scheme that they'll want to start with. And usually that is at least a logo, if not a logo plus other things they've produced. Those could be everything from print-based brochures to websites to email communications to apps to whatever it is. While that's a good place to start, here's the thing I want you to be careful about. You got to watch using large areas of those same logo colors, exact same logo colors on screen. That's because they're often much too saturated. So companies will say, here's our brand colors, use these. 9 times out of 10, those brand colors are way too intense, way too saturated for screen use because, as I said before, they cause eye fatigue. So here's what you do about that. From this logo, we'll pick a shadow, okay? The darkest color here is obviously this dark gray, but it's not black. That's good, okay? It's still dark enough where there's enough contrast, but it's not solid black. It's not going to scream at anybody. We'll pick a midtone out of this logo. Here's another good choice. It's got enough color. It's very subtle. It's not super saturated. We'll pick a highlight. Okay, now your natural inclination would be to say, all right, I'm going to use that pink in the center as my accent color, right? Makes perfect sense. It's an anomaly. It follows the same thinking that we saw in the previous examples. Here's the problem with that. This is way too saturated. And even in a shape that's only this size, this little square, it's way too saturated, okay? It's 86% saturation, and it is absolutely going to fatigue the eyes. If you sort of stare at the edges of that square, does it feel like the screen vibrates a little bit? Your eyes bouncing between the white and the pink, right? It's almost vibrating at the edges where you don't see a clean line. That's because of the saturation, all right? So what we can do is take the same color and just knock the saturation down a little bit. If we take it to 72%, it's much better. A lot less vibration, it's less saturated, and it just sort of sits there nicely and quietly, all right? Didn't take much, but you'll notice that that vibration at the edges isn't happening anymore. Here's another example. Bright Sparks Early Learning Center, right? We take a shadow from that brown, which is a good place to start. We take a midtone from the body of the owl. We take a highlight from the ring around the eye, and we take an accent color from this leaf we have at the bottom here. And just for the heck of it, we'll take another accent color from this pink in the word bright. That brown is okay. That's 40% saturation. It doesn't scream. It holds really well. The edges are clean, clear, crisp. All right, it's working. The midtone is too saturated. 87%, it's starting to do the same thing. It's very fatiguing on the eyes. All right, so if we took it down to 50%, that would be a lot better. This highlight, okay, 90% saturation. It's not going to scream out at us. It's not going to cause eye fatigue. We're good with that. This accent color is way too saturated, 86%. So again, we knock it down. This is much better. It's 58%. Still stands out. It still acts as an anomaly against the other colors, but it's much easier on the eyes. This pink, too saturated, 77% saturation. And by the way, these saturation values, if you were to look at hue, saturation, and brightness, which is HSB in just about any image editing program or design program you ever use, you can see these values, all right? So this is too saturated, it's 77%. If we knock it down to 58%, it's much better. Again, notice that the accents still do what they're supposed to do. They stand out from the shadow, the midtone, and the highlight. They call attention to themselves, but they're not vibrating. They're not screaming at you, and they're not causing your eye muscles to work overtime. So UI Design Mantra 13 is that you should be choosing color based on 3 things: associations, emotions, and brand.